I'm making my guest's favorite drink,
You picked a mojito, Vesper Martini.
the House of Balloons cocktail.
Nice and crisp.
Join me and some of the world's greatest writers.
Multi-award-winning author of 5 novels,
Best-selling author of more than 20 books.
the Pulitzer Prize, among many other awards.
Welcome to Dedicated. Today we're with debut novelist Laura Dickerman. She jokes that, like Laura Ingalls Wilder, she is a late bloomer to the publishing process, but man, has she done it. After a brief period of time at the Paris Review, which will become relevant to our conversation, and years teaching high school English at some great schools around the country, she has published Hot Desk, her debut, which is getting terrific reviews, including a rave from Kirkus, a hard-to-get starred review. I read it, I loved it, and coming from publishing myself, as other reviewers have observed, she has made some great commentary about the publishing business that is just hilarious and totally spot on. And I can't wait to talk to Laura about it. Well, Laura, welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's so fun to be here, especially on Pub Day.
Yeah, on Pub Day. Yeah, so happy Publication Day.
Thank you.
I also am excited about your cocktail choice, which I just learned is something your husband makes. So this has really got me under the
No
gun
pressure.
that this better be good. We're going to have the last word.
Yeah. Did you squeeze all your own limes?
I did not.
Yeah, okay.
I think this is 100%, like maybe organic lime juice, but I did not squeeze my own limes on this one.
Yeah,
I have done that in the past, and it gets a little messy in here.
Yeah. This is not an easy cocktail to make, but it's a good one. And I always like the name of it, The Last Word. I like to get the last word. I like words. It's a good one.
Well, we've got Bar Hill Gin to start, which is from our pal Chris Bojalian up in Vermont.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's where I'm from.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that because I saw a reference in the book to the 76ers basketball team.
I'm from Vermont, yeah, and I have seen Chris in the Middlebury Co-op once or twice in his biking outfit.
Yeah, exactly. He's always posting photos on social media about biking around
Correct.
libraries in Vermont.
Yeah. That's funny.
He's living a good life. So we've got maraschino liqueur and green chartreuse, which we were just discussing, is made by some monks in France somewhere.
I know the monks. All I know is that the monks decided to slow down the production, and you couldn't get the green chartreuse anywhere for a while. It was very hard to get, and we were trying to find it in all the liquor stores all over the country. But I think it's better now.
Okay, we struggled a little to find it. Thank God, Mike, our producer, was able to locate a bottle in New Jersey somewhere.
Oh, I should have just asked for a glass of champagne, but oh well.
No, this is
Make
great. I
you work
love when
for it.
people step it up and get interesting on the drink orders. This is great because I've never had one, so I'm excited to try it.
They're really good. And the Luxardo cherry is the best.
Yeah, double Luxardo today. We got the Luxardo cherry and the Luxardo liqueur.
That's right.
I'm going to put that there. By the way, we're going to do a whole bit on your novel Hot Desk, which really was hilarious and great. But I wanted to ask you quickly first. There are so many, real publishing stories in the book, and there is one I have to know if it's true about an S&S employee on a Zoom doing yoga naked. Is that real?
My lips are sealed.
I mean, it's in the novel, but we can't.
I cannot speak of it. I have a good imagination, is all I will say.
Okay. All right. Well, as an S&S person myself, I wasn't going to go so far as to ask for a name, but I just I had to know.
No names.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go with the pour. All right, I think the color is about right.
Looks
from what
good. I love the
saw
glasses.
Online.
All right.
All right, well, this is going to get your pub day off to a
Oh
nice
my
start.
gosh.
You're going to be staggering around the Strand bookstore tonight.
I mean, I'm going to have to take a nap. Thank you
There we
so
go,
much. I appreciate it.
Cheers. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good. You did a good job.
That is good.
That's really
It's
good,
really
right?
tasty. Yeah.
It's a lot of ingredients, but it's worth it.
All right. Well, tell your husband I managed to, do the drink some justice. I can't be as good as his. All right. So you mentioned Vermont is where you're from. I was wondering if you were from Philly because I saw references to the 76ers basketball team, but I wasn't able to, in my research, figure
Right.
out where you're from. But
Well,
Vermont.
it's funny. I was born in New York City. Mm-hmm. And then moved to Vermont when I was in 4th grade and lived in Vermont for a long time. But I also did live and then came back to New York City and was here for a lot of my young adult life. And then, but I did live in Philadelphia for 2 years.
Okay. Yeah,
and
because you had some references.
yeah.
I'm from Philly, and
Oh,
so I was
really?
connecting with some of the Philly references that you had.
Well, my
Like, oh,
husband's
maybe.
a big basketball fan and a big basketball player, and so we're big Knicks fans. And he sort of introduced me to basketball, and I became a big Knicks fan. Then we moved to Philadelphia, and honestly, the most exciting night of my entire life was when the 76ers beat the Lakers in the first game of the finals. Do you remember that? There was.
I mean, this would have been like that.
This was a long. This was
Dr.
in
J
the,
era.
Yeah, no, it was. I don't know. No, it was in the 90s.
Oh,
it was.
okay.
It wasn't that long ago. But they were then crushed the rest of the games. Okay. But I was in a bar in Philadelphia, and I've never, again, not a huge fan, and wasn't a Knicks fan, but that was the most excited I've ever been in my life when they won. Yeah, it was really fun.
My mind trip to one of my favorite basketball memories is the Sixers finally were beating the Celtics in the championship, so they're going to go play LA, and all of the Boston fans were going, beat LA, beat LA. So that was one of my favorite basketball moments.
That was fun. So I loved Philadelphia. That was a great city. And then back to New York, and then we lived in Brussels for a couple years. Wow. And then back, then we moved to Atlanta, where I've been ever since. Okay. About, like 14 years now.
So again, we'll get to Hot Desk later, but your husband's a basketball player. I'm seeing some shades of Ben, our romantic dreamboat hero from the novel.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
So I think Middlebury and NYU for school?
I went to Hamilton College undergrad. Then I went right into, got a master's in fiction at NYU, or it was like creative writing. I don't think they do that anymore. It was so long ago. And then went to the Breadloaf School of English, which is a program that I did every summer for like 6 summers. And most of the people there were writers or teachers who had their summers off, and got another master's there in English and fiction.
So we'll get into process a little bit more in depth, but would you recommend that for someone who wants to become a writer?
Oh my God, yeah, Breadloaf was an amazing experience. It's a really special place. They have a couple different campuses now, but I just did mine in Vermont, and I loved it. It's absolutely beautiful. It's part of Middlebury College, but it's up on this hill, and it's bigger than a hill. It's a mountain.
So would you write stories and then workshop it with other people?
Yeah, it's a school of English, so you graduate with a master's in English, but I did a lot of creative writing there, and it's just a beautiful program because the professors that teach there and the writers that teach there, everything's very integrated in with the students. And like I said, a lot of the students are teachers and writers themselves, and it's very idyllic, and there are readings and performances, and people really just interacting with the professors in a way that I think is pretty unusual and really special. It's a beautiful place. I highly recommend it.
Oh, that's great.
And it's still separate from, there's also the Breadloaf Writers Conference, which is what I wrote about in the book, which is a very different thing, which is a 2-week program after the School of English, where famous writers come, and it used to be known as Bedloaf for reasons that are obvious. But now I think it's quite serious, sort of networking and reading and mentoring.
Well, that's interesting because there's so much foreshadowing here, but your book, you look at the publishing industry at 2 different slices of time. There's sort of a cross-section from the 80s and then 40 years later. In the publishing industry, I talk about this all the time with people like Nelson DeMille, who had his debut in 1978, when the publishing industry was all about the martini lunches, and, it was a very different social, you'd go to these book festivals, and as you say, the betting was going on, and it's very different these days. And that your book accurately reflects that. But so after school, then was it the Paris Review? You came to New York and worked there?
When I was in graduate school at NYU, I was also working as an intern at the Paris Review. So I did both at the same time. That was a lot of fun. And I was there for a little over a year. I went in a couple times a week and did that. And my classes at NYU were at night. So it was, this was in the...
So for listeners who don't know, Paris Review, hugely prestigious literary magazine founded by George Plimpton and Peter Matheson and one other guy, I can't remember. But were you there when Plimpton and Matheson were also there?
Plimpton, yeah. Okay. George Plimpton, right. So I graduated from college in 1985 and came to New York City and did the graduate school and worked at the Paris Review. And when I went to write the book, and I can tell you more about how the book came about and the idea for the book, but as it became more apparent to me that I wanted to go back in time and write about the early 80s, I decided to set it a little earlier than I had been there. So the early parts in this book are set in 1981, 82, because I wanted it to be like when I was at the Paris Review, we were still on typewriters, but there were, there were floppy disks, and sort of there was just the beginning of computers and things like that. But I wanted to make it really, really clear that it was sort of computery stuff.
Yeah.
So I sent it a little earlier, and then I had to do a lot of research on which clubs were open at which time, because I'd remember going to, I don't know, certain clubs, and then I would Google them. They're like, oh, that opened in 1985. So I was like, oh, I can't use that one. I have to go back and find. There were plenty of places, but that was a lot of fun.
It's funny how readers catch that too.
They do.
You'll get emails that are either sort of somewhere between angry and just letting you know you got that one wrong.
It was very funny because I'll tell you, my brother works in publishing, and I'm very close to him, and he was one that gave me the idea. He gave me a one-sentence assignment to write Hot Desk, and I can tell you a little about that in a minute. But he kept saying to me, just remember, it's not a documentary. And I was like, yeah, that helped me because I was really researching, and I wanted to make sure, because sometimes if you read a book and something is wrong, it does get in the way of it. So I wanted to make sure that it all felt plausible, if not exactly, every single thing right. Yeah,
and so as one example of what you're talking about here, the Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles was set in the 50s, and he has a scene in the football field, and he talks about the goalposts like coming up in basically the shape of a capital Y. And he got these emails like, in that era, it wasn't a Y, it was in capital H. There were two posts with a thing under the crossbar, and he's like, okay. He's like, I'm not a historian, but...
You got to love when people care.
Yeah, exactly. They read closely. It's
right.
The questions at book events and the emails that come back, people go deep. And I've written some nonfiction, and people on certain areas are deeper than I was.
Right.
It was really amazing stuff. So you had, how long, the Paris Review was a sort of more of a season? Like
it was a year. And
season?
It's funny because when I met with Cindy, she reminded me that we had only overlapped for the summer, because I was in graduate school and she was between her junior and senior year in college. And so it was just funny what an impact her friendship made on me and she made on me. So that was very funny.
Any George Plimpton stories to...
Yes, I do have a couple George Plimpton stories. And first of all, I'm not going to give away anything about Hot Desk, but just to have it be said that George was a perfect gentleman at all times.
Okay, that's good.
When it came to me, certainly. But he was charming. He was around. He was involved. And
he had that crazy accent, right? That was like almost something he made up.
He had that sort of, he spoke like it was, I don't know, it was crazy.
It's unidentifiable.
It is unidentifiable.
It might be unique to him. He just he's the only one on the planet who talked that way. Right.
Is it British? Is it Nantucket? We don't know. But yeah, he was very, and he was just very interested in everything. And he took the interns out to lunch, and he, the way that Paris Review was set up at that time was George had this huge townhouse at the East River, and the offices to the Paris Review were in the bottom level, and then you would go upstairs to read. They had readers, and interns would just go upstairs to his apartments and to his apartment, and with these huge windows looking out on the East River. And
so the audience knows much of this is tantalizingly in the novel. So this is all what you're reading in the novel is,
Yes. And it's funny because a lot of it is my imagination because it was 40 years ago. So. But I do have really strong memories, and one of the things that happened with George, again, he took us out to lunch. I don't remember that as well. I may know that happened, but one time I was upstairs reading through the slush piles, and he came downstairs in his boxers and his T-shirt, because again, his bedroom was upstairs. Comes down to the living room, and he had a huge pool table in the main room there, and he challenged me to play pool with him.
Oh boy!
Yeah. So
also in the novel, by the way.
Also in the novel. So we did play pool, and I don't remember anything else about it, but it was that was the only memorable thing.
Slush pile. Just want to clarify that for the audience too. So you get all these unrepresented, many represented by agents, but a lot of unrepresented material, meaning the writer doesn't have an agent representing them. And people send it into something like the Paris Review, which would be like hitting a grand slam if they said, yes, we're going to publish that.
It's very rare.
But so all those go into the slush pile, and the interns read it and evaluate it and say, yes or no, and I think there's rarely, even if you say yes, then it goes up the ladder, and
they all say
probably
no.
get to know.
Yeah, it's very unlikely that you're.
When you were there, did anything come in unsolicited that was or unrepresented that was then accepted and made it all the way to pub?
That's a great question. Nothing that I pulled out of the slush pile that I recall, but I'm sure things did. In the book, I have my character Jane pull a few things out of the slush pile that get published, but no, I did not do that. No, that I remember.
When you were interning there for this year, were you also writing a lot?
I was, because I was at graduate school at NYU, and I was getting a master's in fiction. So I was writing, had these workshops at NYU.
Were you trying to write a novel or a short story?
I was writing short stories. That was sort of the thing. People wrote short stories back then. And I studied with Luisa Valenzuela was there, and Susan Minot. They were both, Susan Minot had just published that book, Monkeys, if you recall. It was a book of, sort of slim book of these kind of intense short stories about a waspy family, and she was very popular. And Mona Simpson was an editor at the Paris Review, so it was a really heady time to be alive in New York City.
So short story collections were kind of selling then, I guess. I mean, these days no one would take that on unless they're a huge name already.
Correct. Yeah, that's true. But that was so. I wrote a lot of short stories and some poems, and then after graduate school, I wasn't particularly disciplined with my writing, and I thought of myself as a writer, but also I needed to get a job. So I became an English teacher, which I loved. And I taught English for many years at different schools around.
I recognize some of the school names. Like Collegiate, is that the New York one or the Virginia one?
New York City.
Yeah.
Collegiate School for Boys.
For a period of time, my boys went to Collegiate.
You're kidding.
I was a collegiate dad for several years there.
Well, I probably could have taught you. So let's
Were you?
back.
Well, no, my oldest is
I could have taught
15,
you is what I'm saying.
But we left, I guess we left Collegiate in 2000 or 2020, maybe?
Yeah, no, I taught there in the late 90s.
Okay.
So I was there for about 6 years. Yeah, just missed me. Yeah, it was great. I loved it.
Over on 83rd and Broadway, what a cool, with the red door. Was it 83rd?
No, it was,
in the 80s on Broadway, right?
It was 78 on Broadway, but they moved now. They have a new fancy...
Yeah, they're down closer to the river in the 60s.
Right. Yeah, I haven't been to the new building.
So we experienced both buildings. We were in the old building and then also the new building.
Yeah, the old building was amazing. Like I'd walk up the steps to my office, and there are these stone steps with little dips in them from how many times the boys had walked up the steps back and forth. I mean, the school was founded, I want to say, in 1620 something.
Yes.
So yeah, it was
Dutch.
Great.
I mean, it was like 12 years after the Mayflower. This school started business.
Yeah, I mean,
they
had I don't know. I mean, this cannot be the case anymore. But they had their sort of school mascot was a Dutchman with like a peg leg.
Peter Stuyvesant.
With like a busty wench under one arm and a tankard in the other.
No, they just had a massive logo change on that. It was like highly politicized and pretty crazy, but they actually were maybe going to change the name from the Dutchman too. Like the Dutch are terrible. They've been horrible for centuries. So, but they kept the Dutchman, but they got rid of Peter Stuyvesant, who apparently was a bad guy.
I mean that makes sense to me. Yeah. But Collegiate was great, and I taught at a couple other different schools. And then as I was teaching, I sort of, I was a writer that was a teacher. Then I became a teacher who wrote. Then I was just a teacher, and then. Then I got married, had kids.
Fiction writing, or
I taught high school English, and so I did electives, and a lot of times the electives I taught was poetry and writing, but also I taught James Joyce, and I taught Shakespeare, and I taught a lot of different other electives.
Well, I remember, what were the other? Collegiate, of course, it's an all boys school in New York City. Yep. It's every year ranked as one of the best, schools in the country.
It's a great school.
But the other schools, I can't remember offhand.
Germantown Friends, which you would know, right?
From the Philly area, that's right. That was the other thing that had me thinking
Friends,
from
which is a Quaker school, which was great. And I started out teaching at the Hopkins School, which is in New Haven. Those were the...
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, what's it like getting a job there? So you went from Paris Review and then ultimately started teaching. But I mean, getting a teaching job at Collegiate was
amazing because back then, again, this was a really long time ago, I was one of the very, very few women that taught in the high school because, when I first applied for the job, they're like, yeah, we have, the women, like 50% women on the faculty. But then, of course, all the women were teaching in the elementary school at that time, or the librarian or something. So a lot of times I would be in the sort of assembly, and they had a theater, and there'd be 400 boys in there. I'd be the only woman in the room, and if somebody said something a little off color, everyone would turn around and look at me. I was like, oh, what? I don't know what to say, guys. But yeah, it was It was a lot of fun. I had a great time there.
Those are special schools. I think those are the most important years, really. The character is mostly developed in that, you know, 3rd grade to 12th grade thing. And where you go to college, I feel like that matters so much less than where you went to high school and what you did in those years.
True. And I did take it pretty seriously that I was a role model for the boys in some way. Not a role. I mean, I don't know if role model is the right word, but that I represented for them a woman who wasn't their mother. You know what I mean? That was able to teach them. And it was a great experience. And I was very much, you will respect me first and like me second. So I was pretty...
I mean, when people ask me the question, which teacher had a big impact on your life? Who had the most influence? The top 10 are all middle school and high school. There's nobody from college for me in the top 10.
Yeah, and a lot of times English teachers.
Yeah, mine is Barry Berg, who recently passed away, so he can't hear this, but maybe he's hearing it somewhere. Barry Berg, for me, it was an amazing influence, my English teacher.
That's great.
All right, so before moving on from Paris Review and teaching, because I do want to talk about your writing process and getting into this book. But you were writing all these years, I'm sure. Are there a bunch of novels and short stories in a bottom drawer somewhere?
Well, you say I was writing all these years. I wasn't really. I'd always, like I said, consider myself as a writer. Then I just started teaching, and for a long time I taught, and then got married, had kids, moved to Brussels. I lived there for a couple of years. And I just, about 20 years ago, I think it was, my brother Colin works in publishing. And
what does he do in publishing?
He is the editor at Grand Central.
Oh, wow.
He's the editor-in-chief. He has a fancy job there. Yes, he's editor-in-chief there.
No, that's a big
he's
deal.
Yeah,
as we were discussing before we came on, started the show, there's I think there are 4, is it the big 4?
Yeah.
4, right? You can talk. Go. 4, right? There's S&S, Harper, Macmillan, and Penguin Random House, and Hachette. So 5, big 5. Yeah, big 5. And Grand Central's part of Hachette, right?
Right. So Colin, he's 6 years younger than I am. I have 2 brothers, James and Colin. I'm very, very close to both of them. James is a lawyer, so we're not speaking of him now. But Colin worked in publishing, and we grew up in a house filled with books. And my dad is a pediatric hematologist, oncologist, but he wanted to be an English teacher. So he really emphasized books, and we were always reading. And that's what we did. We weren't allowed to watch TV. And so we grew up, and Colin and I especially were interested in this path. And so he kind of followed me along, I would say. He came to New York after me. He was an intern at the Paris Review. He got into publishing. And then he just continued in publishing. He started out working for Gordon Lish at Knopf. He was, he was great. And so then I kind of fell off that whole thing. And about 20 years ago, he called me up. He said, listen, supernatural YA is really big right now. You should write a YA novel. I go, about what? He's like, write a story about a boy who falls in love with a ghost. And I was like possessed. I wrote the whole book in about 5 months while my kids were really little. We were in this tiny apartment in New York City. My husband's like sleeping in the bedroom. I'm at the desk. So I wrote the whole novel, and I was like, this is it. It's going to be the next Twilight. I was super excited. And then it went nowhere. I didn't sell it. But I think I was super disappointed, and I kind of put it aside. It's in a drawer, somewhere. But I also was kind of like, this was fun. And I liked getting the assignment from him. So literally 20 years later, my kids are just out of the house, and Colin calls me up. Was it like a year and a half ago?
So in this 20-year period, short stories, hobbying around with
nothing.
anything,
I did nothing.
No writing.
I wrote the novel, and then I wrote some poems. If you'd like to read them, I have. I started a novel. I'm 2/3 of the way through it. I just, I wasn't that. I was, raising my kids. I was. Yeah.
And teaching is all consuming, by the way.
Yeah, I wasn't teaching either. So once I was done teaching, I was I was doing a little teaching. I was doing a lot of tutoring. Yeah. So I wrote a little bit, but I wasn't particularly. And no, by the way, this is a process I recommend to no one. But when Colin called me up about 2 years ago, and he said, I have an assignment for you. I was like, yes. He said, I just got off the phone, and Hachette's moving to this hot desking situation. He explained hot desking, which is a cost-saving, flexible working.
Right, like half the company works Tuesday,
Correct.
Thursday, the other's Monday, Wednesday. So you get people at the same desk.
So you share a desk with another person who comes in different days. And the thing that was the thing that's good about it is that because of publishing, we were just saying, there are all these different divisions under the same umbrella. So you're rival divisions, but you work for the same, you work for Shep, but he's at Grand
house.
Central, someone's at something else. So he gave me this one sentence assignment. He's like, write a novel about two young editors who are forced to share a desk and fall in love. And again, the whole thing was just in my head. And he was a great resource for me because, again, the last time I had worked in an office was in the 90s at Collegiate, where, again, not much of we had a rotary phone and no one ever called it. So he was really helpful to me in terms of what happens at an acquisition
So when you got the deal,
meeting.
you write your first draft of the novel, you solicit, you get a deal, before you get the deal, when you write it and you're submitting it, I guess when you get an agent.
I got an agent.
So once you get the agent, was there a question about whether you would send it to Colin?
No. It's funny because my best friend is also an agent, and I was like, no, I don't. It's not. We want to be as professional as we can. And Colin's an editor. No, he's not going to edit it.
But he obviously acquires novels, and
of course he does, absolutely. But no, we were going to do this.
Did not send it to Hachette.
No. We were going to just do it. Just kind of try to not do any of that. So just completely send it out.
But it's great. Why deprive him of the opportunity of publishing a great novel? I mean, it's clearly great. He should have had a shot at it.
He had to work for me as my editor, not officially. It was fun. We shared a Google Doc at the beginning, and eventually, and again, the novel sort of started out as this kind of rom-com idea, right? Yeah. But then pretty soon after that, I wasn't interested in staying in a genre. And the story follows two young editors who are rivals, and they share the same desk, and there's sort of a literary mystery, and it's a workplace satire. But pretty quickly I became, not surprisingly, interested in the older characters. The main character, Rebecca, her mother, Jane, conveniently women in their 60s who had worked at a magazine that I call the East River Review. So I started drawing on my own memories of that time in my imagination and kind of developing this dual timeline that takes place 40 years earlier, and then became really interested in how those timelines mirrored each other about, as you were talking about, working in publishing and what it was like in New York City at the time.
Well, now that you're a published author with a starred review from Kirkus, which, by the way, is congratulations on that.
Thank you.
It's a huge achievement, especially on a debut. It's amazing. Would you go back to the YA in the drawer, like pull that out and touch it up? When's the last time you looked at this 20-year-old cut at a YA novel? I have
not looked at it in a long time. I would 100%. The only problem with that book is that it is part one of two. And I have not written part two. So it's a kind of a cliffhanger.
At the time, though, did you love it and believe in it?
I
and it just
loved
didn't
and
get off the
believed
ground?
in it.
I mean, it's so hard to get anything. So much great work never sees the light of day.
Oh my gosh, it is.
But now you have access to
I have access.
A whole team that believes in you. So.
Right. I will talk to my agent after this. I'll have a word with her about her YA.
All right, well, let's talk about process for a minute. So you and I are roughly contemporaries. Do you write by hand or do you type?
This is a good question. I mean, when I was in graduate school, I wrote everything by hand on those, remember those long, like the legal yellow pad?
Yes, that's what I wrote
That was me. That was me. And I loved that. And the switch over to word processor and then a computer was really hard for me because you do lose it. And speaking of the Parish Review, one of the things they used to publish, do you remember that, like a piece of the writer, like a famous writer's page with all the crossing out and the editing, and you would really see how that looks. And you just don't see that anymore, right? Because you can do it on the computer. But I haven't looked back.
As a teacher, you may already know this, but there are lots of studies out there that say you remember better as a kid taking notes in class by hand. Somehow typing doesn't do it the way writing by hand does.
Right.
There's something special about writing it out longhand.
That's exactly right. And I feel the same way with, I underline in books when I'm reading them. Like if I'm reading a book, if I was reading it to teach it, if I'm reading it to study, if I'm reading it even for book club, I will buy a hard copy and I will underline in it. I can't, even that, on Kindle, if you do that, it doesn't work for me, the highlighting. I don't remember it the same way.
See, I'm glad I see this in our kids' schools now. They make them annotate books. And so they're underlining, they're writing in the margin. Like, you really should never be reading a book without a pen in your hand.
Correct. I totally agree. And then there's this whole school of people that get mad if you dog-ear pages. I'm like, no, you should. You should be dog-earing. You should be writing. You should be underlining.
Especially out of the paperbacks. I dog-ear the hell out of the paperbacks.
Yeah.
Like, but this first edition of Hot Desk that I have here, I will treat gingerly. There'll be no dog-earing of that. But this is the advanced copy, which is dog-eared and written.
I see all your notes in there. Yes.
There are some notes and some dog-earing. Let me just as an example, just so I'm not underlining and dog-eared.
Oh wow! See, I love it.
Yeah, it was a great book. I really totally enjoyed it. All right, so how about outline? The other thing I read about your this book, I watched an earlier interview that you did online. That you started out, you had this idea, you had the sentence from your brother Colin, and about the hot desking. And then you sort of layered in other elements of the story as you went. So did you outline, like how did you layer in and build out the story?
I did outline. I outlined chapter by chapter. So if you could see my desk, it's, again, I don't recommend this process to anyone. I wrote only at night, late at night. I wrote all night. I did nothing during the day, frittered around. And I also, every time I sat down at my computer, I would start from the beginning and read through. So as the book got longer and longer, that would take me a really long time. But I liked it because I was sort of tinkering and working with it because I'm a kind of perfectionist about it. And, being an English teacher and being a freak about that, I just wanted it, I felt like I wanted it to be, perfect is the wrong word, but I wanted it to be polished as I was working on it. That was helpful to me. And I outlined chapters. Well, the form of the book came easily because Rebecca and Ben, the two main characters, share this hot desk, so it made sense to have them alternate desk days and alternate chapters and voices. Yeah. And then as the voice of Jane, Rebecca's mother, 40 years earlier, came in. So I had the three different voices, and I would map out the things I wanted to happen. I knew how it was going to end. It had to have a happy ending, that sort of thing. But as I'm actually writing, things just happen too. Which is great.
It had like the Sleepless in Seattle feel a little bit to it. It's a great, only sort of like funnier, and you actually take on some real heavy themes too of workplace,
there's
issues, shall we say?
Well, it felt.
By the way, I meant to ask you: are any more George Plimpton stories before we move on?
No, that was the playing pool was the main one, but that was again, perfect gentleman. But it seemed to me disingenuous to write about the 1980s without including. At least, again, it's a happy book, it's a funny book, it's a fun book, I hope. But it felt to me that there were deeper things that you couldn't pretend to be in New York City in the 1980s without writing about some of the issues
you had to. It was well balanced. It was well done with all that. I thought that was great. I feel as Kirkus does. Starred review.
Thank you.
How about the early readers? You sort of divulged that Colin was one who was
Colin was an early reader, and he's great. Like, nothing made me happier than I would send him a chapter and he'd say, "This is so good," and I would just feel great, because it's funny, we have a very close relationship, but and I'm the oldest, obviously, but he, his support meant a lot to me. And then it devolved into his sending me harassing panda emojis, like, "Get to work, hurry up and finish," in his voice, which was kind of disturbing. But I wrote,
how is it taking feedback though? So, for example, you and I are both at SNS,
right.
and I think you guys know my editor Peter Borland, who's amazing. But he'll send, so his cover letter will be like, "Fabulous, I love it," and then I open it up and it's like, I'm like, my God, there are a lot of comments in here. Like,
Colin didn't. It wasn't a lot of that. He was mostly like a source for what happens in a contemporary publishing office. Okay. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. So he let me do the writing.
Which, by the way, your dialogue writing, you could also, I can see you easily transitioning to be writing screenplays and for TV and stuff, because your dialogue is so crisp and good, and it moves, and it's every once in a while you have someone who writes something like, "Oh, it just sort of jarred me right out of the moment," but yours never does. You're a great dialogue writer.
Thank you. Yeah, it was super fun. Colin just let me do the writing, and he was advisor, in terms of details and things like that. And then as it kind of took off, he just let me do it. It was great. Mm-hmm. And then I had two great editors, Alison Callahan at Gallery, and a woman in the UK was also helped me. So I had the two of them.
So how did you wind up with two, a UK and a US editor from the jump?
That's actually a good question. Because when the UK bought the book, And then
you
I
sold
got a
UK before US?
No, US first, then UK.
Okay.
And I got a UK. I came with an editor.
Also SNS? Or something else?
No, she's Penguin Michael Joseph, is I think what it's called. So there's Penguin's kind of commercial division over there, and she was lovely, and she's a millennial, so she was helpful.
What if
with
you got
certain
conflicting
things.
feedback?
I didn't, and Allison was kind of the primary editor.
Okay.
And Allison was very funny because she was like, too much inside baseball here. You want to make sure, that was kind of her main. But because I think. I was really lucky. Everyone just let me do my thing. And they were super helpful. But I wrote it feverishly in a short amount of time. I was just incredibly lucky, and it felt like it all happened really quickly. And my agent Elizabeth Weed from the book group was fantastic. And then Allison bought it in a preempt, and it was all like super exciting and really fast. But then at the same time, it has been a long time coming as well.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let's transition to specifically about Hot Death.
Sure.
And so, as we've discussed, a bit about the book already. You look at the early '80s and sort of like the COVID era, almost like 2022, but just immediately post-COVID, I guess. Both a cross section of the publishing industry. What are some of the things that you thought are the same and largely different?
Well, what I was really interested in, to me, and this is something that sort of came up in the book as I was writing it, I was mostly interested in women's voices and how, women in the workplace, but also this concept of how to reconcile problematic men with genius, with great works. Like, how do you, so in the 80s and before the 80s and probably even after the 80s, but there was this sort of reverence for men who wrote these brilliant books who behaved very badly, in lots of different ways, whether it's Norman Mailer stabbing his wife or Philip Roth being Philip Roth or whatever. So there was this, I'm very interested in that. Because I think you can't say I'm never going to look at a Picasso again. Because Picasso.
I was just going to mention Picasso.
Yeah, exactly. He was an asshole.
Discussion.
Let's face it. But does that mean you never look at a Picasso? So what is
Can
that?
Can you separate the man from the art?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I was very interested in that question. I'm very interested in that sort of then and now. And so in the arc of the story, again, like I said, this is not Anna Karenina or anything. It's a fun book in a lot of ways. But I felt that this idea is something that I've struggled with and thought about a lot. And so I wanted to represent that in the book in these dual timelines where you have in the past, 40 years ago, you have this character of Jane who runs into this character who's this really charismatic. And what I did was I took sort of the idea of George Plimpton and then completely morphed it into a different character who sort of had the charisma of Byron and the popularity of Hemingway and the, sort of this male figure that was a genius and charismatic and charming, but also sort of monstrous in a way as well, like in terms of his privilege and his sort of way of just being in the world. And how do you reconcile that with with the fact that he's writing stuff that's really beautiful and really genius. And what do you do with that? And so at 40 years ago, the character of Jane just has to accept it. 40 years later, her daughter Rebecca, who has the opportunity she's in a rivalry to represent this writer's estate. How does she reconcile that? She knows who he is. It's a different time. She feels much less fondly towards him, but she also recognizes not just the money-making opportunity, but also this idea of legacy. And so I was really interested in who gets to tell a story, whose voices are heard, why they're heard, how they're heard, how do you reclaim, in particular, women's voices. So that became a theme for me in the book that I was interested in pursuing.
Yeah. And she exists in an office environment in which the men aren't trying to run around and trap women half their age.
Exactly.
She meets a nice guy who's a good basketball player like your husband and is behaving a little differently around the office.
That's the other thing, too, because everyone always assumes, like, oh, you're Rebecca, you're Jane. And I'm like, well, I'm Ben, too, to a certain degree.
Each character is an amalgamation.
Of course.
Sorry to reference Nelson DeMille twice in one interview, but he told me, so he wrote this novel, The Gold Coast. And he got tons of blowback, which I on one book I wrote got a lot of blowback. They said it on Wall Street. And I happen to know a lot of people on Wall Street, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, am I that guy? That guy? That guy?" And Nelson wrote this book, The Gold Coast, where he lives, on Long Island. He's like, if I had a nickel for everyone who thought they were a character in one of my novels, It is.
It's funny as a writer, and I'm just starting to feel that now, and I feel like a little defensive about it because I'm like, I have an imagination. It's like, but people are like, oh, this is clearly this person. I'm like, well, clearly inspired by that person.
Or maybe like 2% by the end. It's like 100 people, and that's only half. The other half's my imagination completely.
And also filtered through, right?
Yeah.
So you take, the idea of a George Plimpton character and morph it into something completely different and to serve the purposes of what I'm interested in writing about. And the same, if a character that dresses like one of my daughters, it's not my daughter. Do you know what I mean? So I think that is a really interesting, and I'm trying not to be defensive about it because I think people who don't write find it really hard to understand how writers work. Whereas I'm kind of like, this is my one lane. I know how to do this. Like if you give me a map of the United States, I couldn't fill that in if you waterboarded me. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't understand history. I don't understand. There's so many like directions. No, I don't math. No, like there's a huge swath of things I know nothing about. But I know how, so it is always miraculous to me when people know directions. You see what I'm saying? So I think for some people who don't know writing, they're not writers, they want to know, oh, you just copied down the truth of this person and you made that character. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I agreed, totally. By the way, I don't know why this question just popped to mind right now, but Hot Desk. Did you have that title from the jump?
From the very beginning.
From the jump.
From the very beginning.
From the email from your brother?
From the very beginning, he was like, we have to call it Hot Desk.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, totally. And
wow, how prescient of him. He's a good editor.
He's a great editor. And it was so funny because we were sort of like, okay, this will be our marker title. And then as the book had more sort of, I want to say more depth, but as the book sort of, morphed into something that wasn't just a rom-com genre, it has all the elements of rom-com. It has enemies to lovers. It has a slow burn. It has all these things, but it became something else, something different. And so we're like, we maybe need a more serious title. But then we just like, no, this is a perfect title.
It's a great title.
It's a great
crisp,
title.
It totally hits it.
It's a great cover. I'm so happy. I mean, that's... It was. I thought.
Don't you love the art people at SNS?
Oh my God! I thought I knew about that.
I sent a couple emails like this, maybe this, and they sent them. I'm like, done. That's great. Love
incredible. Like I have just the most. I mean, I thought I knew about publishing. I knew about agents and editors, but there's an army of like dewy-faced young women who are killing it for me. Lucy, over there, my publicist, and the marketing people, and the people that design the covers.
By the way,
copy editors,
Lucy,
amazing.
Send this back to SNS on my behalf. The last time I did a book tour, I didn't have anyone traveling around with me.
Well, if it's local, I'm right there with you. I don't know if they put me on a train.
All right, I'm gonna send something in the suggestion box to Peter.
Exactly.
So let's talk about what's coming up next. You're on book tour now. You got an event at the Strand Bookstore in Manhattan tonight.
Which is amazing because that's like the place I sold my textbooks when I was in graduate school.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
what a moment to walk in there. By the way, are you still teaching?
No.
All right. When did you stop teaching?
Oh gosh.
I was going to say you need like a standing ovation when you walk into the classroom next.
No. I'm not teaching anymore. Although I do think one or two of my former students from a long time ago who are like, married with children. They're grown-ups.
These collegiate boys better be down at the Strand tonight.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I think one or two of them are coming.
Good.
Yeah, it's exciting.
How about the next book?
I have a couple of ideas, and one of them has kind of jostled its way to the front, and I'm interested in, again, kind of a mashup of genres, where this one begins, I've written all of 2 chapters, but you know what? It's all in my head. It's the same thing. All of the characters are in there, like the story is in there. I've already mapped out a lot of it. I need to figure out some of the plot.
Neither character is Ben nor Rebecca.
No. Although one of the ideas I have is a sequel to Hot Desk, but we'll wait. We'll see. I
mean, the characters are so developed and great in here. Like you could easily leap into that.
Yeah, I mean, I have ideas for that, but I'm this one is the one I'm interested in now, and it's again, it's sort of a genre mashup, and I start with a dead body, and then it's sort of the rom-com trope of, I think they call it second chance, where someone goes back to their where they went, where they grew up, and the high school boyfriend's still there, and so sparks fly, that kind of thing. And a group of friends from high school is sort of bad behavior, when you you're too old, but you act that way anyway, So I have it all in my head. So
Cool.
I'm going to work on that. But right now, I'm just really trying to enjoy all of the firsts.
Take the victory lap.
Thank you.
Totally.
Exactly.
Totally.
I know. It
Do
feels
the book
like
tour, enjoy it. That's
it's
awesome.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
never too late. Yeah.
That's so great. All right, I am going to sip the last of my last word,
Oh
which
my
is
God,
fantastic.
cheers.
I totally
It's so
love this
good,
drink.
right?
It's amazing. I
So
love this
good.
drink. And we will
Perfect.
start the lightning round.
Oh my gosh. All right.
All right, your favorite book as a kid?
Emily of New Moon by Lucy Maud Montgomery.
I don't
And do you
know
have
that book.
daughters?
I do.
Okay,
She's 14.
well, did they? Oh, when they were younger, they probably read Anne of Green Gables, maybe, which was the less interesting to me of the Lucy Maud Montgomery books. And this book, Emily of New Moon, was my favorite book for a lot of reasons, but it's about a orphan. It's a little dark, which is why I liked it. But she is very committed to being a writer, and she had purple eyes, and I was kind of obsessed with wanted to have purple eyes, So but it was one of the first books I read. I mean, of course, Jo March from Little Women. I wanted to be Jo March because she was a writer. But Emily of New Moon, I just loved because she was really committed to being a writer, and I was like, oh, you can do that. They did not. Yeah.
Just back to the victory lap for a minute. You must be so psyched.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
So great.
It's so fun. It's and it's. I mean, I don't know. I just think things happen when they're supposed to happen. This
Yeah.
is when it happened for me.
Who's happier, you or Colin?
Colin's grouchy. I'm happier. But he's thrilled.
By the way, so the audience knows, in your bio, this is so fun. This is what first made me love you. You're joking about, you're telling all the things about her, and sort of written in the third, but like, she does this, she does that. She is happy being the funnier sibling or something like that. I can't read it right now, but because I've had my last word. But
yeah, right.
That was a very funny line in your bio.
It is true that when I came to New York,
she enjoys being the funnier sibling.
Yeah, I do enjoy being the funniest sibling. But when I moved to New York, there was a short period of time when Colin was working at Atlantic Monthly, which then became Grove Atlantic, and for Morgan Entrekin, who was the editor there, and I had a short job, a stint as his temp. Mm-hmm. And he was a monstrous boss, and he would yell at me because I didn't know how to change the toner in the Xerox machine and stuff. But we joke about that. I was like, I was your temp. I mean, how the lowest moment, honestly. But
what's the age difference between you and
6
Colin?
years.
6 years. Okay.
6 years.
Oh,
And my
that's a
brother
healthy
James
age
was
difference
right in the middle.
in that era.
Yeah.
All right, book or books you're reading now?
I always try to read a couple books at the same time. I have a book, a hardcover, which right now is Flashlight by Susan Choi. I don't know if you heard of that. She wrote one of my favorite books a couple years ago called Trust Exercise, which was this really, it's so good. And I love it because it's almost 3 books in one. It's a really surprising book, and it deals with a lot of the themes that I'm really interested in, but it starts out sort of one kind of book, and then there's this shocking kind of turn of the narration, and another person takes over, and then there's a third part that makes you kind of reflect on everything that's come before. That's really interesting. And it reminded me a little bit of one of my favorite books, which is Atonement by Ian McEwan, which is a book about fiction, right? It's a book about stories, like what does the writer owe the reader, and what is truth and what is fiction. And so this book's Trust Exercise by Susan Choi did those, kind of raise those same questions for me. And this is her new book, Flashlight, which I think is fascinating. And it's about North Korea a little bit. It reminded me of Pachinko. I don't know if you've read that.
Yeah, Min Jin Lee is a great book.
The Koreans that lived in Japan. And this kind of follows that same model where it's kind of historical, but also very specific. And
by the way, Min Jin Lee is also a collegiate parent.
You're kidding.
No, I am not kidding. She and I did a panel one year at Collegiate. They have author night at Collegiate. I don't know if they did that when you were there, but they have author nights if you've published a book.
Yep.
So one year I did a panel with Min Jin Lee and David Duchovny, who's a collegiate graduate,
yes, he is.
as you know, along with JFK Jr. But yeah, Min Jin Lee, author of Pachinko, and a prior guest on the show she's a great writer.
Pachinko was an incredible book. But so Flashlight has kind of reminds me a little bit of that. So there's the specific, personal kind of characters, but then this overwash. It was the only way I can read history, honestly, is when it's in a novel. So
totally told in a novelistic way, like narrative, like Eric Larson, David Grand stuff is just the best.
And then also read a book recently that I can't stop talking about, Beautyland. Have you read that? By Marie Helene Bertino is her name. And this book I just Loved it. It was so good. It just came out of nowhere. And again, I'm interested in books
Write that down. Beautyland?
Yeah, Beautyland. I'm interested in books that kind of cross genre. Like I would never pick up a sci-fi book. I just wouldn't. I'm not that interested. But this book has elements of sci-fi.
Game of Thrones?
Of the book? No. Come on, stop. There are like 4,000 of them. The show, yeah,
setting
yeah, yeah.
season 8 aside.
Yes, the show, of course. I have thoughts. But anyway, but yeah, so Beautyland, it's about this little, at the same moment that we sent Challenger 1 into space to like show the aliens who we were in the 70s, this novel picks up with this little alien probe that's sent to Earth to record Earth habits, and she's born as a little girl, a baby. And it sort of follows her life. So it's this weird sci-fi novel where she is communicating by fax to her minders on her planet, which is a bazillion miles away. But it's also a coming of age novel because she's a person. And it's so beautiful. I mean, honestly, I laughed, I cried. It's
nice.
a really good book. Yeah, I thought it was beautiful. So I'm reading that. I'm reading a ton of stuff. I read all the time. Yeah.
All right, good. You need something to keep you company on book tour as you jet around. All right, favorite book to teach a high school class?
This is a great question. I'm going to be like kind of a nerd and kind of old school. Like what I like to do is to unlock a classic for kids, right? I think like, anyone can read Catcher in the Rye and love it, right? That's an easy book. But if you take, I don't know, I'm going to say Macbeth. I'm going to say Frankenstein.
I was just going to say okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Frankenstein, Macbeth. These are books that are hard to read. It's language that kids they're not that familiar with it.
Yeah.
They're themes that are pretty advanced. But if you can take books like that, they're short books, they're bloody books, they're intense books, there's a lot going on. If you can unlock those books for students, I think you can, that to me was the most rewarding, to make students love a book that they wouldn't pick up on their own, that they might be intimidated by, and you can sort of walk them through it and make them love it. To me, that was really rewarding.
You sound a lot like my favorite teacher ever, Barry Berg, he would get the whole class, we would be sitting in a big circle. It wasn't exactly Dead Poet Society, but it was like not far, really. I mean, he'd get everyone talking about it and participating and like into the book.
Right, it's really
But it'd be the kind of book you would never have otherwise gotten into.
Right, and that to me is what teaching is, where you can unlock that. Like when you teach something when you feel like you're needed for it, right? Yeah. That to me was the most rewarding.
Oh, that's awesome. Favorite moment teaching high school?
Oh my God, I have so many moments teaching. Let me think. I guess, I was really bold when I was a young teacher. I would just call up or email famous writers. I'd be like, hey, would you come to my class? I can give you $200 for your train fare from Sarah Lawrence or whatever. I had Yosef Kumanyaka, I had Sharon Olds, I had Mark Doty, I had these incredible writers just come sit in my class and read their poems. Wow. And I remember one time I don't know if you've ever read Lucy Greeley, who wrote Autobiography of a Face. And she sadly died young, but she was an incredible writer. And I used to teach an essay by her, and she had some kind of cancer that deformed her face, and she had so many surgeries on her face, and she wrote this beautiful book. And the essay I taught was about how Halloween was her favorite holiday because she could wear a mask. And I had her come to collegiate and there were, again, as I told you at the beginning, sometimes I'd be in this room with 400 boys and they would all turn and look at me. But Lucy Greeley came and spoke to this. I had her come and she spoke, and I just remember being so proud because you could have heard a pin drop. The respect for her and her courage to stand in front of all those boys, and that was a very beautiful moment for me, being able to sort of bring these writers and poets into my classroom, and then to have that moment when they just sat really quietly and listened to her was really powerful. And what else? Well, I taught high school boys, and the first year I ever taught, I didn't know enough to say no, thank you, to teaching 8th grade boys. And they gave me one
big
8th
difference.
grade. Oh my God. They gave me one 8th. And 8th grade boys are the worst. They literally, you'd have kids sitting next to each other. You'd have one, kid with a mustache and one kid who was still making forts in his parents. They're just so different.
The disparity is crazy. With just like when puberty hits.
And I would get them right after gym, and they smelled terrible. And I remember being like, you guys stink. Like, honestly, can you do something? The next day they all come in, they'd covered themselves with Drakkar Noir. It smelled like a cheesy nightclub. I was like, no.
Was that a sincere effort, or were they were mocking?
Effort. Oh, it was a sincere effort. They were wearing the worst aftershave, and it was crazy. But I do remember one time I had this 8th grade kid, and I was pretty, as I said, I was like, respect me first, like me later. I was very strict, and I remember one kid was doodling something, and I of course ripped it out of his hand. It was a picture of a person with a giant open yelling mouth and a big witch hat, and that was me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I pinned that up above my desk. I had it there for 5 years teaching.
That's
and
awesome.
he ended up being one of my favorite students. But.
So hat tip to you, but teachers are just the best. But I'll say one other, this teacher is also in my top 10 most influential favorites. He said, well, he was a math teacher though, and he said, I teach for 3 reasons: June, July, and August.
It is. I know. It is a good job.
Yeah. But he was joking. He was an awesome guy and worked his butt off and cared and loved us all.
Right.
And, but
that's a great job.
Had a sense of humor. All right. Favorite moment so far in the publishing process? I know it's early days.
It's
you got
early
a tour
days.
ahead and you have many moments.
It's just been incredible. I have to say that early on, Simon & Schuster sent us to. They had six writers called Simon Selects. It was awesome. And they sent us to a couple different places to meet with booksellers. And that was really, really fun. And I had a great time. And 2 great things happened. One was I met a woman who was a bookseller. She owned a bookstore in Chapel Hill somewhere. And I remember her saying that, they all had early copies of Hot Desk. And I remember her saying that, I brought Hot Desk to the beach and my mother loved it and I loved it and my 20-year-old daughter loved it. And I thought, if I can do that, like cross-generational, that's a really special to me, and really that was more than I could have hoped for. And then there was a guy named Nick who worked at Love Struck Books in Cambridge, and he made a cocktail for each one of us, and he made a hot mess Manhattan for my book, which was pretty funny. I don't know how edible it was, but that was very exciting to have a cocktail named, sort of inspired by the book. Was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
By the way, Lucy, is it 17? Which is the building? Which is the floor at SNS that has the
portraits?
The portraits, yeah.
17,
right? One time I wandered up to the 17th floor of SNS, and it has like the portrait of Hemingway and all the stuff.
I'm not sure why
I'm
not
was
on
like,
there.
I'm like,
yet,
oh
Lucy.
my God, wander up to 17 one time.
Get on that, right?
All right, last question.
Okay.
One piece of advice for someone trying to either write or publish somewhere in there.
Okay, I don't
their
have one
debut
piece.
novel.
I have like 20 pieces. I don't know. For me, I guess, get rid of the perfectionist that's in your head, right? Write the book that only you can write. And it's never too late.
Awesome.
Obviously.
I love it. Laura, what a pleasure. It's so great to have you in here.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. Thank you. We need to eat our cherries now.
Yes, I'm going to do it right now.